everybody, Josh Sigurdson of World Alternative Media here, and of course we're joined by author and economic analyst here, where I'm John Sneisen, and we are facing a rapidly aging population. And of course a lot of you will say, well, okay, what about it? Well, I think I've gone into it a few times in the past, in past videos, that the fact is the baby boomer generation, of course, is a massive part of the economy. They are massively spending into the economy. And of course, now they're also spending for their grandkids, spending for their kids with university debt, all sorts of kind of stuff. And they are dying off. And who's going to pay for the system? The system is becoming incredibly unsustainable. John, can you go into this?
Well, yeah, first of all, like they're now, of course, needing to sell their assets to retire. And the problem is with that is that you have who's going to buy it? Who's going to buy all the assets? And then, of course, there's massive amounts of cost. If you have a government that have universal healthcare, like Canada, for example, has, it's going to be massive amounts of cost acquainted with that. On top of that, you're going to have a lot of cost when it comes to paying out the pensions, the old age security here in Canada, and Social Security and so on, Medicare, Medicaid in the United States, all these programs that they're gonna withdraw money from, and they're hoping to get the money. And we actually had a report recently from the IMF that we were mentioning in one of our videos that talks about how the millennials really need to start saving money, but not waiting for money from the government, because it's not going to happen.
Well, yeah, and we've seen a large dependent public come about over the last, especially the last 60 or so years. And it's interesting to think about how much debt young people have, who's paying off that debt, and then who's also these people that are in debt, these kids that are in debt, paying for the older people that are ending up, with health problems and all sorts of stuff. And
just getting that old age security from the government.
Well,
right?
yeah, and obviously I'm not heartless here, but the free market, when it comes to healthcare, I've gone into this before. You see, when the government is monopolizing the system, they're inflating the price. They're causing the price to go up. They've got those monopolies in the pharmaceutical companies, all these medical giants that we see throughout the world now that are being funded by the taxpayer, and that monopolizes them. That kills competition. That kills innovation of medicines that we need in order to be able to actually cure diseases, etc. There's no incentive. There's a lot of incentive for profit. There's a lot of incentive to just perpetuate the problem, so that you get this pill and then you need that pill and that pill. And if people look to the free market where these individual companies can compete against each other, there's incentive for the price to go down, because they want to provide the best service, the best product for the lowest price. And because of that, there's more incentive in that competitive market to create better things. And obviously the price of living would go down in a free market and a free monetary system. And of course, the amount of money that people make will go up, because obviously there's going to be more jobs, more employment, more productivity, more innovation, more competition. This is all a good thing. But as it stands today, with heavily socialized healthcare systems, with vastly monopolized industries via the hand of the state, this has become very difficult to get by, because we are going to be paying for this en masse to the extent where we can't pay for it, and that system has to come down.
Yeah, no. In the United States, for example, they have $200 trillion of unfunded liabilities that they promised out in these programs, that they would have to basically borrow money out of thin air in order to be able to afford them, because they can't get it from the taxpayers. It's not enough to tax them even 90% to get it.
Yeah.
So the government has promised way too much money that they don't have. And we've seen this all around the world. All these programs will probably collapse one by one as the population is now aging, especially the biggest part that was the baby boomers, like our parents, me and Josh's parents. Their population is aging now, and what we're going to see is a huge move where we're going to see people wanting to sell out of the stock markets all their assets. They're going to downsize. And who's going to buy those big houses that they had? A lot of the baby boomers.
Not people in Vancouver, that's for sure, when it costs like more than $1 million.
Yeah, so what you're seeing is there's a big collapse coming that is a little bit like slow, like it's in slow motion, because it's happening over years, this thing. but it will eventually come. And then on top of it, having them blown massive amounts of debt bubbles everywhere.
It doesn't help that a lot of the baby boomers, did a lot of, drug abusing in their heyday. Let's face it, that's not going to help the system very much when, all these residual effects, health effects from back in the 60s and 70s.
Well, what we need to do is we need to privatize everything and then let the free market really compete. And
that means you, as individuals, deciding with your vote, with your dollar.
If you want to be an entrepreneur today, one of the biggest industries is going to be the healthcare industry, where you can innovate, you could create cures to diseases and so on that they, of course, now are holding back from the public, the pharmaceutical companies. If we come in with free market-minded, smart people that are wanting to change the world and have a healthier world, that's where we could really change
and actually have to worry about demand instead of just going like, okay, well, I'm going to get my money from the government either way.
And healthcare being such a massive part of the GDP, they actually count the healthcare as a part of the GDP, which is actually a really negative part, that you have a huge healthcare sector.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, of course, with the aging population, that's a little bit different, but we're talking about the general health of the population. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to show you from the Visual Capitalist a couple of pictures that is going to really put this into context, what me and Josh just have talked about. Now, right here we see in 2015, the population that are 60 years or older in the world. So you can see the green are in 20 to 25%, anything yellow is 25 to 30, and then over that is 30%, which is red. So you can see Japan, which has been in this demographic cliff, and they've been printing massive amounts of money because they're trying to create growth when they don't have growth, like their population is shrinking. So of course you will see more and more money printing out of this. And that's what we're seeing kind of now, starting to really intensify, because they're really struggling. The government is struggling to get more income. They're getting less and less income from people. And what you're seeing here is Sweden, Finland, France, Germany, Italy, and Greece is the one that are really starting to age their populations. Now, of course, Canada and the United States is at 20% and above, as well as most of the Western world today is aging and have that baby boomer population. That was a huge, sizable part of the population. Now, when we go to just to look ahead, and this is going to really show you where we're heading, and by 2050, this population of people that are 60 years and older will have actually grown in most of the countries up to or above 30%, and that's a substantial amount. Where are we going to get all this money from for that income? Look at Canada, where me and Josh are from. That's going to be over 30%. Most of the Western countries, except for Norway, Brazil, the US, Russia, and Australia, but all the other ones are going to have a massive, sizable amount of their population being aging and above the retirement age. So who's going to feed, of course, the income into this current system that we have, which is not going to be sustainable. Like it has to be taken away, this unsustainable government handout programs, and actually have people be more self-sustainable by themselves and take care of themselves, invest your own money, and not depend on that government paycheck. Because I've known people throughout my life that are waiting for that government paycheck, and they know, oh well, when I retire, I'm just gonna live on old age, like in Norway, for example, and they're just gonna downsize massively and just like barely scratch by. I remember my grandmother was on old age in Norway, and she didn't have a lot of money, but she was fortunate. She had a lot of family around her that took care of her. But I think that they took care of the millennials, like the baby boomers, and now I think the millennials will have to try to take care of the baby boomers. But the problem is
they don't have the money to do that.
They don't have the money to do that.
No, but this is a side effect of a system that we've gone into a lot. But this is just one of many side effects of this system of market rigging, manipulation, of out of control central planning, of just the amount of debt that everyone is in due to out of control government and out of control monetary practice that is just shoved us down that bottomless pit of debt. And as I so often go into, you're shoved down that bottomless pit of debt, and you're forced to ask for a ladder up from the government and the banking system, and that's servitude. And that's part of the script, I do believe. But John, go on. You got a few more here.
Yeah, just to show you the worker participation rate for people that are 65 years and older in countries. Looking at the United States, they have actually 20 to 29% of people above the old age secure, like when you actually retire, still working because they didn't save up enough money. They don't have enough money that comes from the government, of course, that they were promised. So that's going to be another huge issue. A lot of people are not able, because of this high inflation and destructive monetary system, all these bubbles growing everywhere, and all the people having the retirees having their money in bonds, which is a huge issue with the bond apocalypse that's going to come, and all these debts starting to collapse around the world. I don't see where you're gonna have like the labor force participation rate for 65 and older suddenly with different collapses happening in the system, where they, for example, had saved money into and believed in the system for their whole life because they were born into it, and they rided that debt wave that is now starting to peak, and what you're seeing is a huge deflationary pressure on the world economy all around the world. Most countries, they are deflating, and then of course you have the central banks. What they want inflation, because the governments are getting into so much debt because of the deficits that they have to spend on programs like this, and they need inflation. So what they will do is, Japan is a great example where everybody's going here. Is they've been printing a mass amounts of money they're printed their yen into oblivion. It's starting to become into the worthless territory now. Of course, it's not there completely yet, but it's lost a substantial amount just since 2008. And of course, now they're in negative interest rates. They're the biggest amount of negative bonds that are issued in the world. And how people gonna invest in negative bonds where you're gonna lose money by investing in it doesn't make sense. So we're definitely heading down the road of Japan with most of these countries that have this whole aging population. We were just a little bit slower and a little bit behind them, but we're getting there. And we need to find solution, and we need to innovate. Of course, the Japanese are great at innovation and automation. I think what we need to do is we need to figure out ways to, I believe, instead of letting this current healthcare system destroy people, I think, how about, people live to their 120 years old? That's completely fine. I think we should aim for that. And they should be able to live with a lot higher quality of life. And we need to educate people about healthy living. There's people around the world that are living this age, but of course the pharmaceutical and of course the big industries like McDonald's and all these. When you go into your store, and right in the middle there, it's all these cereals and everything that they're creating that are so bad for you.
That's monopolized by regulation of the state. Absolutely.
Yeah, and exactly. So, and that, of course, have created massive amounts of sick people. In the U.S., it's terrible. And it's spread that, with the type of food that, get popular in other countries. And we see it, starting to in Canada and all the Western countries. So what we need to do is we need to really innovate here and start like a health boom and really make people a lot healthier, and with that they would be able to create so much more value into society, and we would probably start thriving a lot more, and we would be able to get over this by eliminating the current system that is completely flawed with the government handouts and with the fiat currency system.
Absolutely. And another big part of this is that, we should decentralize with, blockchain, cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Steam, get into sound money, gold, silver, preservation of value that's lasted millennia. And then, of course, the self-responsibility, self-sustainability, food, water, shelter, defense, all of that. That's a great part of also being able to ensure yourself and your wealth and your well-being, because in the long run, the government's want you dependent on this vast amount of statism that we watch on both the monetary and market level is just insane. And I think we need to get out of that system entirely and be able to take care of ourselves. And with that, yes, people will say, well, who's going to help the people that can't, work and blah, blah, blah. For when the price of living is so much lower and there's so much more more money, abundancy of money and employment out there, and so much more value for your buck, then we're going to see a lot more or a lot less people in need of that care, and a lot more people able to take care of those voluntarily that need that care. So I think it's a lot more reasonable to say, well, we should look towards a free market, free monetary scenario and decentralize, instead of just this constant propping up and perpetuation of the same problems over and over again, problem, reaction, solution, repeat, until, you know, until we're basically crushed under the weight of this massive state and banking complex that's pushed us to this point in the first place. People should be healthier, people should be able to decentralize, people should get off that grid, and people will be much happier. The value in life and value of their dollar will go a lot further than it is today. So thanks, John, for going into all these animations and going into these stats. I think it's really important, because I think people need to understand this before they can implement it and put it to work. So thanks again, John, and make sure to check the links below. GoFundMe, Patreon, we can't do it without you. Any donation is very much appreciated here at WAM, as we are so vastly demonetized and censored by YouTube. Also check our Bitcoin address in the description and the comments, as well as on the screen for you to scan if you please. And also check that link for the Red Pill Expo, which takes place June 23rd to 24th in Bozeman, Montana, where you can see people like Robert Kiyosaki, G. Edward Griffin, Lord Monckton, Richard Gage, James Corbett, Jeff Berwick, Ty Bollinger, Mike Adams, Cynthia McKinney, John Rappaport, Joel Salatin, Patrick Wood, and so many other incredible speakers. We hope to see you there. But until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson and John Sneisen signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.